Have you felt that inexplicable heaviness in your home? That sense of unease that creeps in when darkness falls, especially during the most sacred days of the year. On this Good Friday, as the world commemorates the ultimate sacrifice of our Lord Jesus Christ, Padre Pio sends an urgent spiritual warning that echoes through time. Your home stands vulnerable to unseen forces if not sealed with the holy sign of the cross. This isn't mere superstition or religious folklore. It's a profound spiritual reality that the great mystic saint understood through his own supernatural experiences. The veil between worlds grows thinner during these sacred days, and what you cannot see with your physical eyes may be gathering at your doorstep, testing the spiritual boundaries of your sanctuary. The saints throughout history have recognized this truth, but perhaps none saw it more clearly than Padre Pio, whose stigmata and spiritual gifts gave him unprecedented insight into the invisible battles waging around us. The devil is like a rabid dog tied to a chain, Padre Pio once warned. Beyond the length of the chain he cannot catch you, but if you approach too near, he will seize you. During Holy Week, particularly on Good Friday, these chains seem to lengthen as the powers of darkness make their final desperate assault before Christ's victorious resurrection. Your home, the place where you seek rest, where your family gathers, where you lay your head to sleep, becomes a target precisely because of its importance in your spiritual and emotional life. The enemy knows that by disturbing your peace at home, he disturbs everything. This warning is not meant to inspire fear, but to awaken awareness. Padre Pio would often tell his spiritual children that knowledge of spiritual warfare is our first defense against it. Just as you would secure your doors and windows against physical intruders, so must you secure your spiritual boundaries against forces that seek entry through unseen cracks. The practice of sealing your home with the cross on Good Friday stands as a powerful tradition that Padre Pio himself advocated, having witnessed its protective power countless times among those who sought his counsel. Before sharing this simple yet profound ritual with you, one that has shielded thousands of faithful homes, you must understand why this particular day holds such spiritual significance, and why the cross serves as our most potent symbol of protection. Good Friday exists as a pivotal moment in spiritual history, a day when heaven touched earth through suffering, when divine love confronted cosmic evil, and when the ultimate price for humanity's redemption was paid in full. You might observe it as a solemn day of fasting and prayer, but beneath these observances lies a day of immense spiritual energy. Padre Pio often spoke of how the barriers between the visible and invisible worlds grow most permeable during the Paschal Triduum. He described seeing demons in greater numbers and with greater boldness during these sacred days, particularly as the hour of Christ's crucifixion approached. Their desperate activity stems from their knowledge that their defeat was sealed on this very day 2 millennia ago, and they rage against the reminder of their ultimate failure. Your home represents more than physical shelter. It embodies your spiritual foundation and family legacy. When left unsealed during this spiritually charged time, it can become a battleground for forces seeking to undermine your faith, disrupt your peace, and plant seeds of discord among those you love most. Padre Pio understood this with perfect clarity through his mystical experiences. He once told a troubled family whose home had become a center of unexplainable conflict, "Your walls have eyes and ears that you cannot see. Mark them with the sign that defeated death itself, and watch how quickly peace returns." This family, following his instruction to seal their home with crosses on Good Friday, later reported a transformation so profound that neighbors could sense the difference simply by walking through their door. The symbol of the cross carries power not through superstition, but through sacred remembrance and divine promise. When you trace this sign with intention, you invoke the victory won on Calvary, a victory that continues to reverberate through time and space. Padre Pio explained that the cross creates a spiritual frequency that harmonizes with divine protection while creating dissonance for forces that oppose it. The cross, he once said, is the devil's nightmare. He cannot stand before it, cannot remain where it is honored. This is why the tradition of marking your home is not merely symbolic, but truly efficacious, creating a spiritual seal that the enemy recognizes and respects. The question is not whether this practice works, but whether you will embrace it with the faith needed to activate its full potential. The ritual of sealing your home with the cross on Good Friday requires no special expertise or elaborate preparations, only sincere faith and intentional action. Padre Pio taught that the simplest acts, performed with pure devotion, often carry the greatest spiritual power. Begin by preparing your heart through prayer, asking for the Lord's protection over your home and everyone who dwells within it. Padre Pio recommended spending at least 15 minutes in silent prayer before beginning this sacred act, allowing your spirit to align with the solemnity of Good Friday and the protective purpose of what you're about to do. Remember, it is not the mechanical action but the faith behind it that activates this spiritual shield. Just as the Israelites marked their doorposts with lamb's blood on that first Passover, you now prepare to mark your home with the sign of the Lamb who takes away the sins of the world. For the ritual itself, you'll need to decide what to use as your marking medium. Padre Pio gave 3 options, in order of preference: blessed oil, especially olive oil blessed by a priest; holy water, or simply your index finger, pressed with intention. Starting at your home's main entrance, make the sign of the cross while praying. Through the sign of the Holy Cross, may this home be protected from all evil and filled with the peace of Christ who suffered, died, and rose for our salvation. Move methodically through your home, marking each external door and window frame with the same sign and prayer. Pay special attention to the bedrooms where you and your loved ones sleep, as Padre Pio noted these as places where spiritual battles often intensify during vulnerable states of sleep. Many families add a short prayer specific to each family member when marking bedroom thresholds, asking for particular graces needed by that person. After completing your journey through the home, gather everyone in your central living space for a concluding prayer of dedication. Padre Pio suggested reading Psalm 91, the great psalm of protection, followed by an Our Padre, 3 Hail Marys, and a Glory Be. Finally, make one large sign of the cross in the center of your home, declaring it a sanctuary under divine protection. Do you believe this simple yet profound tradition can transform your home into a fortress of spiritual safety? If so, type, "I am ready to seal my home with faith this Good Friday," in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful spiritual practices that have changed thousands of lives. The saints await your response, and Padre Pio's wisdom stands ready to guide you toward deeper protection for all you hold dear. You may wonder why Good Friday specifically presents such intensified spiritual vulnerability. Padre Pio explained this phenomenon through his mystical insights, describing it as a cosmic anniversary that reverberates through the spiritual realm each year. On this day, he told his spiritual children, the powers of darkness remember their greatest defeat and seek to compensate through heightened activity. This explains the peculiar disturbances many experience during Holy Week: unexplained tensions in relationships, sudden obstacles in spiritual practice, unusual nightmares, or a heaviness that seems to descend without cause. These are not coincidences, but coordinated spiritual resistance to the remembrance of Christ's victory. Your awareness of this pattern is your first line of defense, allowing you to recognize these disturbances not as random events, but as spiritual assaults that can be systematically countered. The danger intensifies precisely because of what Good Friday represents, the moment when light conquered darkness through apparent defeat. Padre Pio often spoke of how evil forces operate according to inverted logic, celebrating what appears to be victory while blind to the deeper reality of their ultimate failure. During his years bearing the stigmata, Padre Pio reported that his wounds would bleed most profusely on Good Fridays, accompanied by increased demonic attacks that sought to discourage him from his mission. They hate this day most of all, he once revealed, because it reminds them of their miscalculation. They thought killing Christ would secure their victory, never understanding that his death was the very plan that would undo them completely. This cosmic paradox creates a spiritual atmosphere where darkness pushes back hardest against commemorative acts of faith, making protective measures not optional but essential. Your home stands as a microcosm of this larger spiritual battlefield, with its boundaries representing the front lines where protection must be actively maintained. Padre Pio taught that physical spaces retain spiritual impressions, absorbing the energies, both positive and negative, of events that transpire within them. Homes where prayer is neglected, where sacramentals are absent, where faith is unacknowledged, become particularly vulnerable during heightened times of spiritual activity like Good Friday. A house without spiritual protection, Padre Pio warned, is like a bank without security. It advertises itself as an easy target. By understanding these spiritual dynamics, you recognize that sealing your home isn't superstitious ritual but practical spiritual management, acknowledging the reality of unseen forces while asserting authority over your sacred space through Christ's victory on the cross. Though it may seem antiquated to modern sensibilities, Padre Pio understood the practice of home protection through a sophisticated spiritual science that contemporary physics is only beginning to approach through quantum theories about intention, observer effects, and field coherence. What you believe shapes what you perceive, he often told skeptical visitors, and what you perceive shapes the reality you experience. This profound insight anticipates what quantum physicists now suggest about consciousness as a fundamental rather than emergent property of reality. When you mark your home with crosses on Good Friday, you're not engaging in empty symbolism, but actively participating in reality shaping through focused spiritual intention. The cross, charged with 2,000 years of devotion and representing the central moment of cosmic redemption, creates what Padre Pio called a vibrational signature that harmonizes with divine protection while creating dissonance with opposing forces. The specific locations for marking crosses throughout your home aren't arbitrarily chosen, but strategically identified based on spiritual vulnerabilities that Padre Pio discerned through his mystical gifts. Entrances and exits, doors and windows, serve as literal and metaphorical portals where energies enter and exit your living space. Think of them as spiritual filters, Padre Pio explained, that either permit or restrict what flows through them. The bedrooms receive special attention because sleep represents a state of heightened spiritual vulnerability when conscious defenses are lowered. Padre Pio often noted how patterns of disturbed sleep, nightmares, or chronic insomnia frequently resolved after homes were properly sealed. Technology centers, where your family accesses the internet and media, also warrant particular attention in our modern context, as Padre Pio presciently warned that future technologies would create new portals for spiritual influence that would require specific protection. This systematic approach to home protection reveals Padre Pio's understanding that spiritual warfare follows discernible patterns rather than random chaos. By mapping these patterns and responding with targeted protective measures, you engage not in folk magic, but in applied spiritual wisdom. Padre Pio emphasized that consistency matters more than intensity. A simple cross traced with deep faith every Good Friday creates stronger protection than elaborate rituals performed without conviction. The enemy recognizes authentic faith immediately, he taught, and flees from it faster than from any grand demonstration lacking true belief. This practical approach to spiritual protection demystifies the process without diminishing its power, making it accessible to anyone regardless of theological education or mystical experience. The science of spiritual protection doesn't require special gifts, just sincere application of timeless principles that saints like Padre Pio have verified through direct spiritual experience. Consider the remarkable case of the Morales family from Spain, whose three-generation home had become a center of inexplicable conflict and misfortune. Their youngest daughter suffered from night terrors so severe that she would wake screaming about shadows watching from the corners. Their teenage son developed sudden behavioral problems after years of being a model student. The parents found themselves arguing over trivial matters that had never bothered them before. When they consulted Padre Pio during a pilgrimage to San Giovanni Rotondo, he listened quietly before saying, "Your home has uninvited guests that must be shown the door." He instructed them to seal their home with crosses on Good Friday, paying special attention to the attic where previous owners had experimented with divination. Though skeptical, they followed his instructions precisely. Within weeks, the night terrors ceased, family harmony was restored, and their son's teachers reported a complete return to his former character. "It was as if a fog lifted from our home," the mother later wrote to Padre Pio, "and we could finally see each other clearly again." Or reflect on the experience of Professor Alessandro Bertini, a respected academic who prided himself on his rational approach to life. When persistent health problems defied medical explanation and coincided with disturbing changes in his home environment, objects moving, unexplained cold spots, and electronic malfunctions, a colleague suggested he consult Padre Pio. Initially dismissive, the professor eventually relented as his condition worsened. Padre Pio surprised him by addressing him as "my skeptical friend," before he'd spoken a word. Then told him about a specific antique chest in his study that needed to be removed, followed by a complete sealing of his home on Good Friday. The professor later documented how following these instructions coincided with an immediate improvement in both his health and home atmosphere. "I cannot explain it through my previous intellectual framework," he wrote, "but neither can I deny the empirical evidence of cause and effect I witnessed in my own life." His testimony is particularly powerful, coming from someone predisposed to doubt. These accounts represent thousands compiled by Padre Pio's spiritual children and the Capuchin brothers who worked alongside him. What makes them compelling is their consistency across cultural, educational, and socioeconomic differences. From simple rural families to urban intellectuals, from devout lifetime believers to recent converts, the pattern remains remarkably stable. Homes properly sealed using Padre Pio's method report significant positive changes. Particular patterns emerge across these testimonies: restoration of sleep quality, reduction in family conflicts, dissipation of oppressive atmosphere, and a general sense of peace that visitors often comment on without prompting. The spiritual principle at work transcends individual psychology, creating objective changes that outside observers readily perceive. Padre Pio himself kept no records of these successes, seeing them not as personal validation, but as expected outcomes of applying spiritual laws correctly. "I am not performing miracles," he would insist when praised for these transformations. "I am simply showing God's children how to access protection that has always been available to them." The first pillar of Padre Pio's home protection system is consecration, the intentional dedication of your living space to sacred purpose. This goes beyond the ritual of marking crosses to encompass a fundamental shift in how you understand your home's spiritual significance. A consecrated home, Padre Pio taught, becomes an embassy of heaven on earth, operating under divine rather than worldly jurisdiction. This consecration begins with recognition that your property boundaries extend into spiritual dimensions, creating a territory that can be claimed and defended through spiritual authority. The practice involves a formal prayer of dedication, ideally prayed annually on Good Friday after completing the cross markings, in which you explicitly place your home under divine protection and dedicate it as a center for virtues you wish to cultivate: peace, love, truth, joy, healing. Padre Pio emphasized that this consecration must be renewed regularly because spiritual claims, like legal ones, can weaken if not reasserted. Many families follow his recommendation to create a small home altar with blessed objects as a physical anchor for this consecration, a visible reminder that their home operates as sacred space. The second pillar is purification, the systematic removal of spiritual impediments that compromise protection. Padre Pio was remarkably practical about this aspect, advising families to conduct a spiritual inventory of their possessions, identifying and removing items with problematic spiritual associations. Some objects, he explained, regardless of their monetary value or sentimental attachment, create spiritual static that interferes with divine protection. He specifically mentioned occult items, even those kept as curiosities, objects associated with former destructive habits, gifts from people with harmful intentions, and certain forms of art or entertainment that glorify values contrary to spiritual well-being. This purification extends to digital space in our modern context. The media consumed, the conversations permitted, the energies invited through screens. Padre Pio anticipated this by warning that future homes would contain windows to the world that seem innocent, but require careful guarding. The purification process isn't about rigid rules, but spiritual discernment, asking whether each element in your home strengthens or weakens its protective field. The third pillar is maintenance, the ongoing practices that sustain spiritual protection between annual Good Friday renewals. Padre Pio insisted that even the most powerful initial protection would gradually diminish without regular maintenance through daily spiritual practices within the home. A protected home, he taught, requires daily acknowledgement of the source of that protection. He recommended establishing a consistent family prayer time, however brief, where the home's consecration is implicitly renewed. The regular use of sacramentals, blessed salt sprinkled at thresholds, holy water used when entering, religious images placed strategically, serves as spiritual maintenance that reinforces boundaries. Padre Pio placed special emphasis on maintaining peace among inhabitants, teaching that internal discord creates cracks in spiritual protection faster than external attacks. Guard your words within these walls, he advised families, for they become the spiritual atmosphere you breathe. This maintenance pillar reminds us that spiritual protection isn't a one-time insurance policy, but an active relationship requiring regular attention, much like physical health or important relationships. In today's hyper-connected world, Padre Pio's teachings on home protection take on new dimensions that he prophetically anticipated. Your modern home contains portals he never personally encountered, internet connections, streaming services, smart devices that listen and respond. Yet his principles apply with remarkable precision to these new challenges. Future homes, he once predicted, will face invasions not through doors and windows, but through invisible pathways that families invite inside without recognizing the dangers. This foresight now guides how you can extend the cross-sealing ritual to your technological gateways. Many families following Padre Pio's tradition now make the sign of the cross over their Wi-Fi routers, computers, and entertainment systems, consciously establishing spiritual firewalls that filter the energies these devices transmit. Some create digital backgrounds, featuring protective symbols for their screens, serving as constant reminders that even virtual space within their homes stands under spiritual jurisdiction. The fragmentation of modern family life presents another challenge to home protection that requires creative adaptation of Padre Pio's methods. With family members often scattered across different schedules and sometimes even different locations, the unified approach to home sealing that worked for previous generations needs thoughtful updating. Padre Pio emphasized that protection works best when all household members participate, yet recognized that this ideal isn't always possible. For contemporary situations, his spiritual children have developed adaptations like coordinated distance prayers, where family members synchronize their intentions at an agreed time, even if physically separated. Others create simple protection kits with blessed oil and written instructions that traveling family members can carry, extending the home's protective field to temporary lodgings. These adaptations maintain the essence of Padre Pio's teaching, while addressing the realities of modern living patterns, demonstrating that spiritual principles remain effective when applied with wisdom to new circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, Padre Pio's teaching on home protection offers a powerful antidote to the isolation and anxiety that characterize much of modern life. In an age where many feel powerless against global forces beyond their control, the ability to establish and maintain spiritual sovereignty over your immediate environment provides both practical benefit and psychological reassurance. Your home should be your first church, Padre Pio often told families, where you experience God's presence without intermediaries. This vision of the home as spiritual sanctuary has never been more needed than in our current context of institutional distrust and social fragmentation. By implementing Padre Pio's protection system, you reclaim agency over your most intimate space, transforming it from merely functional shelter to consecrated ground where deeper dimensions of existence are acknowledged and engaged. This transformation affects not only spiritual realities but psychological ones, creating a sense of meaningful order amidst chaos that modern psychology recognizes as essential for human flourishing. The ancient wisdom Padre Pio transmitted thus addresses thoroughly modern needs for stability, meaning, and connection in an increasingly unstable world. You stand now at a crossroads of spiritual choice as Good Friday approaches, a decision point that Padre Pio would identify as more consequential than most realize. The ritual of sealing your home with crosses represents not merely a protective technique, but a declaration of spiritual alignment, a statement about which authority you recognize over your sacred space. Each home, Padre Pio taught, either stands as an outpost of heaven or becomes contested territory where opposing forces clash without resolution. Your decision to implement or ignore this protection creates ripple effects beyond immediate safety concerns, influencing the spiritual atmosphere your family breathes daily, the thoughts and emotions that readily form within your walls, and the invisible assistance available during times of crisis. This Good Friday presents a clear opportunity to establish these boundaries with renewed intention, regardless of whether you've practiced this tradition before or are considering it for the first time. The practical application awaits your decision. Blessed oil or holy water prepared beforehand, a prayer in your heart, and the simple yet profound act of marking the crosses with deep faith rather than mechanical obligation. Padre Pio emphasized that the external ritual, while important, merely activates the internal commitment, your genuine desire to place your home under divine protection and live accordingly within its walls. For those unable to obtain blessed materials, remember Padre Pio's assurance that faith transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, making even a cross traced with your finger effective when done with sincere intention. The process takes perhaps 30 minutes for an average home, yet potentially alters its spiritual dynamics for months to come. Consider setting aside specific time this Good Friday, ideally between noon and 3, the traditional hours commemorating Christ's Passion, to methodically and prayerfully implement this protection. Prepare by resolving any conflicts with family members, creating a harmonious foundation for this spiritual work. The testimony of countless families across generations stands as witness to the efficacy of this simple act of faith. Their experiences, restored peace, inexplicable healing, renewed relationships, and a tangible sense of protection await your household as possibility. Padre Pio, who saw directly into spiritual realities hidden from ordinary perception, insisted that this practice creates measurable differences, visible to those with eyes to see. "I wish you could see what I see," he once told a hesitant family. "How differently light appears around homes that stand protected versus those left vulnerable." This Good Friday, you have the opportunity to place your home within that circle of light, not through elaborate rituals requiring special knowledge, but through simple faith expressed in intentional action. The choice remains yours, but Padre Pio's guidance stands clear. Do not leave your home unsealed this Good Friday. The protection available through this ancient practice costs nothing but a small investment of time and faith, yet potentially shields everything you hold most precious. Will you accept this invitation to transform your home into a sanctuary of peace and protection through the power of the cross?